Hello and welcome to the Proptech Hot Seat on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we explore trends and technologies driving innovation across the built environment. This show is brought to you in partnership with Proptech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors and for industry leaders. In the Proptech Hot Seat today, it's Fred Jones, Chief Operating Officer at homebuyer UPSTIX. Fred, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So UPSTIX, tell us a little bit about the company's offering.
Well, for your viewers, they might not know, but the UK house buying and selling market is really broken, and it's certainly not one that's been designed with the customer in mind. Just to put some numbers to it, it takes on average 5 to 7 months to sell your property, and 1 in 3 property sales fall through at the last minute. And obviously, they're behind those numbers are people who are stuck in their homes. Perhaps they can't move into their property of their dreams. They can't downsize. They can't move into the area they need to for their kids to go to school. And what UPSTIX is doing is really disrupting that with a new way for people to sell their property that gives them speed and certainty and helps them move forward with their lives, if they want to move quickly.
Fred, it will not surprise you to know that the Irish market is not much different. And to be honest, I don't think we're behind, but I also don't think that we're very much ahead. There have certainly been changes in the last while, but really what's speeding up the process, the home buying and selling process in Ireland right now is ready demand. No property sits on the market for any length of time. So that's really accelerating things, and it's actually hiding a couple of maybe systemic problems like conveyancing delays and others that still persist. So I suppose that's my way of saying we're flying a little bit below the radar just because we've such chronic shortages. And the demand is so strong, but I don't think there's anybody who would come through the transaction and say, yeah, that was a really enjoyable experience. So I'm always interested in anything that will actually improve things. I'm really interested in that stat, 1 in 3 falling through, because in Ireland we don't have that stats. We have anecdotal evidence or anecdotal information, but we're not capturing that in any sort of data capture. So we are dependent on anecdotal commentary, and we know that at certain times there's a higher fall through rate than others. So it's really interesting. The 1 in 3, is that a current stat for the UK market?
It is. And one of the things that the way UPSTIX is trying to solve this problem for consumers is by really leveraging technology and data. So we're powered by Ultra data and technology that gives us a fantastic view of the entire market, right down to an individual buyer, seller, and property level. And so we're able to kind of track these things. And we're seeing these fall through levels increase in these times, particularly with interest rates increase. People might need to remortgage, values go up and down, and sales fall through. So it is a real problem for people at the moment.
Okay, well, talk to me like I'm a consumer. How is UPSTIX different to what currently happens?
So, if you're wanting to sell your property, you've probably got, one of 2 choices. If price is really important to you, you can go to a traditional estate agent and they might be able to get you the highest price. But with that comes a lot of uncertainty. As I said, it takes an average up to 7 months to sell your property. And until it's done, it could all fall through and frequently does. Or you can go to perhaps other fast buying companies, and typically to sell your property quickly, you need to take a significant, accept a significant price below market rate. And it's a very fragmented industry at the moment. What UPSTIX is doing is actually kind of trying to solve both parts of the equation. So we can give you a guaranteed sale, which will be at a discount to market rate, normally 10 to 15%. But also, when we put the property back on the market, and if we sell it for a good price, we'll share some of those profits with the vendor. So, they can increase the money that they get from their sale. And also it enables them to move on quickly.
And what kind of market traction have you been getting?
So I've been at UPSTIX a couple of months, and even in just that short time, we're seeing double-digit growth month on month, week on week in the interest that we're getting in. Thousands of people come to us each month, and we're seeing real interest in this offer because it is so unique and it's solving a tangible problem that people have.
So where do estate agents fit into this? Are they cut out of the transaction, or could they potentially be bringing business to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, in many ways, it's not a direct competition with estate agents that people might think. Actually, it's quite complementary in a number of ways, because estate agents bring business to us because obviously they're trying to hold these property chains together. And if something falls through, they're left after, many months of hard work, with no fees and disappointed vendors. So they can come to us and we step into the transaction and help keep the chain intact. Also, when we buy a property, we want to put it back on the market and we relist it with those estate agents. So in many cases, they're doubling their fee income by getting the original sale and then the relisting through UPSTIX. So actually, it's a really complementary relationship we have with estate agents.
I suppose I have to focus on the sellers because they're obviously the people who are paying for this, and so they're accepting a 10 to 15% discount on the property. I appreciate there are definitely times in the marketplace where that would work. I look at the Irish market right now and how it's doing. Certainly there would be no need. I appreciate what you're saying about properties falling through, but right now we're in such a buoyant market, such demand outstrips supply by such a massive extent. I'm wondering, why would a seller do this? So you might just talk us through some of the seller personas that you have, just so I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the data we look at, around 25% of the vendors on the market every year, every month, speed is really important to them. And then we see a couple of situations that cause that. So, some we've just touched on, like the sale falling through, to keep your hopes and dreams of moving into your family house or whatever of your dreams, you need to be able to get yourself under offer and sell quickly. So I think that's a clear one. We see a lot of demand there. There are others as well. So, one is probate. Some people, if they're looking to liquidate their kind of family estate, it's a difficult time at best. And, the stress and turmoil of putting a house on the open market, having to do viewings, maybe having to do sort of remedial work to it. A lot of people just think, I'd like to kind of wrap up and resolve this estate quickly. So we see some from probate. Also with these times, financial distress is tricky, particularly with interest rates so high. A lot of people might be remortgaging, realizing that actually with the current market rates, they can't afford their current property and the mortgage rates they're paying, and so they want to downsize or move before they get themselves into a lot of debt. And so for them, the prospect of waiting 7 months, paying very high monthly repayments on a new mortgage deal just isn't an option for them. And so they want some certainty and security, and you'll want to sell up quickly. And then I guess kind of the final one that we kind of see is, in other situations like divorce, where people, again, maybe splitting assets, want some certainty and security around the value of a property, and will want to sell it quickly so they can move on with their new lives.
It's interesting. We've spoken a lot about below market value properties in the past and buying off market and why people would do that. And sometimes it's difficult to understand that in such a buoyant market. But I think you're absolutely right. Divorce and probate are the two instances where we've seen people just want clarity. They just want certainty. They just want to close on the day they're going to close. They just want out when they want to know what it's going to cost them, and they just want that certainty. So I think probate and divorce are two very particular instances where I would see this would work. I'm interested in what you're saying about the interest rates, because actually this is something we're speculating upon in the Irish market. We're speculating how rising interest rates will impact homeowners and potential buyers, because right now first-time buyers are dominating our mortgage market. You might just share a little of the trends you're seeing across the property market in the UK. I appreciate that's a big question, but certainly break it down, isolate it to the London market if you need to.
Yeah, well, look, certainly we see overall transaction volumes, particularly after the crazy times during the pandemic, they definitely are subdued. And we see perhaps some people with the expectation that interest rates might plateau or come down might be holding off. But equally, that lack of demand is also really emphasizing this need for certainty and speed. We get a lot of people coming to us whose property's been on the market for a while. Perhaps, yeah, they've been slightly optimistic on the price that they think they can get for it, or they realize it's just been dragging out and they want to move by the end of the year. So we still see that core people where speed is important still coming to more market because there are other factors that's driving their need to sell their property.
Yeah, and that's something that I think can occur in many different market types. And it's one of those things that's almost not market dependent at all. It really comes down to the personal decision. And
Yeah.
Fred, you mentioned there that you're just with UPSTIX a couple of months. What is your background in real estate or technology or something altogether left field?
It's certainly not in real estate. So I spent the best part of the last 10 years in some well-known kind of tech scale-up businesses. So I spent just over 5 years at Uber, where I did a variety of roles, but ultimately was running the UK and Ireland business. And then just over 3 years at Tier, which is the micro-mobility provider. Some of your viewers might have seen Tier's scooters on DCU campus in Dublin or across Fingal, some of the e-bikes and recently in Limerick. So yeah, I've always kind of had a passion for fast-growing business, building teams which really solve tangible consumer problems in a really technology-led way. And that's what led me to UPSTIX. I'd had kind of personal experience of horrific process of trying to sell a flat to move in a family home. It fell through twice. Then the Grenfell disaster happened in London. My property had some cladding, so then I was stuck for 4 years, unable to sell it. Ruining the sales that had fallen through because I could have got with it, and really, had to put my family life on hold. With 2 small kids was really stressful, kind of moving around rental accommodation, and I just kind of realized that the market isn't built for people who, money and value of your property is important, but ultimately we move for other reasons. And there's a real opportunity for some people out there to have a product that UPSTIX offers.
Yeah, the instance that you're describing, while obviously the cladding issue is one that we've covered here before and we know was a huge issue for people trying to sell and buy, and particularly for those that didn't have sinking funds within their development and things like that. So we know, and actually in Ireland we've had other issues, but with similar impacts, where people were literally stuck because they owned an apartment within a complex that didn't have a sinking fund to fix the issues that would allow them to sell. And quite frankly, I know they would have jumped at a 10% discount to offload their properties, but that just wasn't an option for them. So I think that's really interesting one. Coming from Uber, first of all, I have to say I have heard too many Proptechs to count describe themselves as the Uber of real estate, and I've yet to meet one that actually is. So it's amazing coming from Uber. You're obviously being introduced to this new and we can't call it an emerging sector of Proptech because obviously there's been technology serving real estate for decades, but in the last 7 years there's been this real movement, this push. And what's really interesting is that 7 years ago everything was disruptive, whereas now we're seeing it's we're just trying to make things better, guys. We're just trying to make things better. And what's funny that actually user experience and the whole side of UX is something that just didn't even factor into real estate until a couple of years ago. So excuse me, coming from your background, how alien is the processes that we're still using even with the improvements in real estate?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm new to this industry, but one of the real areas where I think there's huge potential, and one that UPSTIX is really leaning into, is understanding the marketplace, valuing properties, and making smart kind of investment decisions. So UPSTIX's founder, Giles Mackey, he's been in the business for 25, 30 years. He built and sold HomeTrack. His technology and data, allows banks, I think, to value 94% of the properties in the UK mortgage market. So, he understands it. We're now applying it to the residential market, and we're allowed to, redraw on huge amounts of data points for specific properties to really understand what is the price of that property, how quickly do we think we can resell it, and at what price. And then that's what gives us the confidence to then go to consumers and offer them a fast and certain experience.
your experience and the technology underpinning your valuations, is that what separates you from maybe the traditional iBuyers we would know from the US market?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are lots of different kind of business models out there, and I think the US, particularly firms like Open Door, etc., have shown the real opportunity for iBuyers. UPSTIX is slightly different, so we're really leaning into technology, not just with our valuations, but with how we set up our entire workflow. So we do everything in a really automated way. But yeah, we can. The UK is a fantastic market because it's diverse and fragmented enough to be a real challenge for consumers, and for institutional investors wanting to get into the PRS market. But it's small enough that we're able to get a handle on a really good data set to understand all those different divergences really well, right down to a street and property level.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the data. Well, really, the valuation model is what I'm really interested in, because that will either be the success or the downfall of the business. How accurately you not just value the homes, but that you forecast the market so that you're actually future-proofing your business. So talk to us a little bit about the valuation approach that you're taking.
Yeah, so for every property, we have thousands of data points on that property. We've also got, through Outra's data, lots of socio-demographic data on the individual as well, and we can use that and understand things in a number of different ways. So obviously we've got all the property history to hand, and I don't think that's particularly unique, but we have that to hand. We're able to then cut and slice at a very micro level, understand how a particular type of property in that area, how that peer group has performed over recent times. We're also able to understand the likely demand, so the depth of market for that type of property, by understanding affordability of all the households around it, and how many people are likely to buy this. We also have quite a number of sophisticated propensity models, so we're able to use AI and machine learning to come up with predictions on how likely the property is to sell under value, how many days it's likely to take to resell. So we bring all these together, and our underwriting team has also had the experience of doing this for 25 years. So we get the human experience applied to some of the sophisticated data and technology we have to really make good investment decisions. And our recent track record has shown that we're able to crack it.
Can you share your expectations of the UK marketplace for, say, 2024 with us?
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, we're looking to triple our monthly volumes in the residential space. That's buying and selling residential properties. We are also just launching and scaling up another proposition, which is targeting private landlords, sometimes with one or two properties, sometimes with a portfolio of 20, 30, who particularly are feeling the pinch of rising costs and interest rates. And we're focusing on particular high yield properties that we can originate on behalf of institutional investors who want exposure to a large portfolio of properties in the residential tenanted kind of marketplace. So we're seeing huge demand for that at the moment. So yeah, we've got really ambitious projections for the next 12 to 24 months.
And are you confident that the housing market in the UK will support those predictions?
I do. One of the things is, in kind of normal times, around 800,000 people move a year. 25% of those, speed is really important. There's another percentage, 30%, whose sale will fall through. So these are really big numbers. We do not have to secure, crazy market shares to actually deliver a really profitable, sustainable business. So yeah, I'm really confident that there's plenty of headroom in our addressable market to support our growth plans.
That's a natural advantage that founders in the UK have over, say, our PropTech and construction technology founders in Ireland. We have such a small marketplace that our founders have to be geared and very focused towards export from the start. And actually, in some cases, they're better off using another market other than the Irish market as the test market. So part of that comes down to tech adoption. So I'm conscious of time today and I don't want to delay you too long, but I'm just really curious, given that you've come from, I love chatting to people who are new to real estate anyway, because I think there's a really interesting perspective there, but especially somebody who's coming from a tech background, having worked with such fast scaling consumer tech. Are you surprised at how low the standards or the expectations of consumers are for this market?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But in that, then I see an opportunity because, if you go back to 2015 when I joined Uber, it wasn't uncommon that if you wanted a taxi or a cab on a Saturday night, you'll wait for 45 minutes and they may not show up. And that was just accepted that's the way it was. But then you bring in something where you can get a car in 5 minutes and suddenly people are like, wow, this is kind of what I want. And so, whilst there are challenges with working in the complex conveyancing environment that we're in, I think there's a huge opportunity to really change people's expectations for what they want when they sell their house.
Given your background and understanding of the user experience and your growing knowledge now of how transactions work, how much of the real estate transaction do you think PropTechs are starting to focus on, or what extent of opportunity still exists, do you think?
I mean, certainly in terms of the competitive landscape in the UK, obviously you've got the established kind of estate agents, but as I can explain, we don't really directly compete with them. There's a real complementary nature there. There's around 26 other, fast buying iBuyers out there, but hugely fragmented. Obviously pretty small. Not everyone will have the confidence with going with them. It's a sector that in some parts doesn't have a fantastic reputation around treating customers fairly. So I think there's a lot of competition, but no one's cracked it yet. And where I think kind of UPSTIX has a real advantage is, the technology and tools that we have at our disposal are really light years ahead of where a company at our stage really should have. And through our kind of history in the market for 25 years, great access to kind of funding and capital, which means that we can kind of cope with demand and transact quickly when people come to us.
Okay, that's a good one. And I suppose final note, what should we be expecting from UPSTIX in 2024?
Well, I think hopefully in 2024, really hoping to break through into kind of the mainstream. So, we've been operating very successfully, but in some small niche markets like part exchange, for many years. But what I'm really hoping for in 24, that we kind of cut through and it starts to become a normalized and understood way and option for people to sell their property.
Look, that's what we'd like to see for all PropTech adoption. So hopefully we're getting closer to that. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was Fred Jones, Chief Operating Officer with PropTech homebuyer UPSTIX. And my thanks as always to producer Katie Tallon and to the audio team at Hear Me Roar Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out all of the other real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio. Before we go, a special word of thanks to our sponsor, Proptech Ireland, for making these conversations possible. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Proptech Hot Seat here on iPropertyRadio.